Hello RPG fans and welcome back to the kingdom. Coming off the excitement and fun that I had of my 13th challenge run, I wasn't quite ready to put this game down yet. So this brings us to our 14th challenge run. Can you beat granbluefantasyrelink with Zeta? With the storyline progression in this game, I have to have the captain in the party at all times, so what we're going to do is limit the functionality and utility of the captain in combat, and this brings us to the rules. We must be on hard mode, we must use Zeta when available, which is after the first Furycane fight, which is where we will start the video off at. No equipping skills on the captain, no offensive masteries on the captain, no collection upgrading on the captain, no multiplayer, forced interactions, cutscenes, or tutorials don't break the rules, and no glitches, exploits, hacks, mods, free or paid DLC if there is any, and our victory condition is to beat the final storyline boss. After unlocking Zeta, I went over to the training grounds, and I must say it was not pretty with how the flow of combat was going for me trying out this character for the first time. I'm not a big fan of the triangle or the Y button to where you guard and wait to counterattack. I'm not a fan of that. It has costed me so much of my HP bar in the future battles that I pretty much just don't use the triangle button. I have a really big habit of using the dodge command, and I'm slowly getting better at using the block command instead. But as for the countering, I'm just not a fan of it. I did a couple quests at the counter to try and get used to Zeta's combat abilities, and then I also reviewed the Fate episodes for Zeta for what I have already unlocked, and then from there we are going to continue on with the storyline. I've also been dumping everything I can mastery-wise and sigil-wise into Zeta, so in terms of upgrading sigils, I think I only upgraded maybe 2 sigils throughout the entire playthrough. It's really hard to upgrade them until post-game. So we're just kind of dealing with what we have right now. So storyline wise, after fighting Furycane for the first time, we automatically get a crewmate card, and this is the card that we use to get whichever hero we want next. I must say it is a lot easier trying to do damage than just having the AI party members trying to do the damage for me from my last run, so this portion of the game goes a lot smoother. I have no issues taking down the power cores on the ships and progressing these series of events. Galonzo, one of the Church of Avia's generals, soon joins the fray to try and put a stop to us, and this fight went pretty terrible for me with still having to learn all of Zeta's moves. With the current skills that I have on Zeta right now, I've got the Signa Drive, which is the R1 and Circle, which is a attack buff. And then I also have 2 range attacks, which is the square and X button. So Rain of Fury also debuffs Galonza to make him do reduced damage, which is pretty important for me because he hits me a lot. I go through all of my recovery items on this fight. And the Infinite Wanders I stick with through the entire game because it's really good at targeting adds when a boss summons them, or just trying to not lose your break bonus gauge. When you are having to stay away from an enemy, it's really good at not letting it fall off. As for Zeta's normal attack spam, this is where a lot of damage comes in for me on this fight, and I'm also able to avoid a decent bit of his AoE attacks as well as just normal attacks by staying above him and attacking him. So ever so often at the very end of the normal attack combo, Zeta will jump off of the enemy and into the air and continuously hit the enemy from the air, which is indirect damage mitigation. So it is pretty nice to be able to do that. As for everything else, I get hit by a lot of things in this fight. Like, there's no sugarcoating it. I was not doing good on this fight. But after 8.5 minutes, I finally managed to down him. I was able to get a surprisingly nice amount of practice while heading up the snowy mountain on our way to the next boss. With the combat that Zeta has the capabilities of doing, I'm feeling a lot more comfortable with it, and I'm really enjoying the playstyle. This leads us to one of the easiest mini bosses, I think, Nazar Bondu. One of the things with this boss is it's pretty easy to tell who he's going to target with his ice beam because he will usually look at the person. But the initial animation when the beam leaves his eye and reaches the destination, that part usually caught me off guard, and it is enough to one-shot me at this stage in the game. So as long as I'm able to dodge that, I should be fine, but I don't end up dodging it a couple times. I do find it just a little bit weird how the water elementals are not weak versus fire. Instead, they're weak versus earth. It's a little bit weird in my opinion, but it is what it is. With dancing around the ice pillar that Nazar summons, it's pretty easy to destroy the pillar, especially with how much damage Zeta does. It's able to go down in 2 or 3 hits, so this makes for really quick work on stunning the boss and being able to do a lot of damage output at the same time. Nazar will also summon several adds throughout the fight, and they can be targeted by locking onto something and then using the right analog stick and moving it to the left, right, up, down. Wherever the mob actually is on the screen is usually where you will want to move your direction, and it can lock onto them. And this is where the R1 and square comes into play, or the Infinite Wonders ability. It stacks 3 different charges, and it does fill up over time, so you could use 2 charges and then just let it fill up and you'll still have 1 charge remaining. Now with that being said, I think that the lock-on system in this game is probably one of the worst I've ever experienced. Trying to lock onto something that you want and trying to cycle through what you want to target is so bad. It really needs reworked. The amount of times that I have just straight up been zeroed because all of a sudden I'm targeting like an ice pillar way in the background behind me for whatever reason when I'm trying to target the mob in front of me. It's just absolutely ridiculous. I cannot really say anything nice about this targeting system. But after 8 minutes, this boss finally falls, and this felt like a really long 8 minutes because I'm still getting used to the combat system with this character. After meeting up with Historiath and unlocking the gates, we come across our next fight, Id, which is a forced fail scenario. So going on to the real boss fight, Managarmr. I was really looking forward to this fight mainly because of Zeta's mobility and being able to stay above the boss and dodging a whole bunch of damage, but at the end of the day, my first attempt, I got wiped at 9%, so that didn't really feel that great. So on attempt number 2, which lasted about 15.5 minutes, it went much better. We start the fight off with trying to get behind Managarmr as we do a little bit of increased damage from behind, and a lot of the time the Managarmr was trying to attack the captain, which was completely fine for me. It's not like I get to choose who the boss attacks, but however, when the captain does go down, this does take away from my ability to res a certain number of times as well. So it is acting as a team effort. If the captain goes down 4 times and then I go down like 1 time, I won't have that much time to try and spam the buttons and get resurrected. So during the unarmored phase and pre-overdrive, Managarmr will tend to jump in the air and do a lot of tail attacks on the ground that will either land in front of him or behind him, but it will create an AoE on the ground that you don't want to stand in. And then once you reach the overdrive, also while in non-armored form, he will do a skill called Final Sweep, and this is your sign to get behind something, or you can perfect dodge out of the way. But I prefer just to stand behind something because it's less risk. Eventually, when he goes into his armored form, this is probably my most favorite form of him in terms of me being able to do damage. He's slow, and Zeta can keep up just by continuously spamming the attack button. Even when he's moving, Zeta will automatically move forward and keep attacking him. And due to this, it's really easy to get a lot of back attacks off, so definitely use this to your advantage. I know I did. And again, this is another fight where the infinite wealth or the right trigger and square really comes into play by being able to target those icicle adds. This is absolutely crucial. And because, like I mentioned on the Nazar Banju fight, with having 3 charges, for me it only took 2 charges to down an icicle, and then I just kept running around waiting for either an icicle to get right in front of me, and then I would use my R1 and triangle to charge the icicle and just destroy it. But with the infinite wealth, it really makes things a whole bunch easier throughout this entire game. It's a really awesome skill. When Managarmr is in his armor form as well as overdrive, he will have a tendency to jump up in the air, which creates an AoE spot directly below him. And when he lands, he will create an ice wave that starts to spread out towards the rest of the room. It is really easy to just straight up jump over this wall. You could also guard against it, not advised, but you could also dodge over it as well. But definitely jumping would be the way to go, and this is a really easy mechanic to avoid. Throughout the entire game, I think this was my most favorite fight, because this was the fight that I really started to get a better understanding of Zeta's attack combos and the way the flow of combat is supposed to go, as well as being able to target additional adds with the Infinite Wonders. It felt really good, even though I did die, and after 15.5 minutes, this boss finally falls. I take a slight break from the storyline to get my weapon upgraded and uncap it if I can, as well as do all the side quests that I can, as well as spending all of my mastery points to further the offensive tree for Zeta. I also view all of the Fate episodes on Zeta as well as the Captain. Proceeding on with the main storyline, this takes us to the desert where we need to activate the treasure in the middle. And to do that, we need to defeat all 3 bosses in this area, so we go ahead and take out the Rock Golem, wasn't much of an issue, the Griffin also wasn't much of an issue, and then the Skeleton, which probably gave us the biggest issue. He did zero us out one time, but it wasn't anything that we were able to recover from, and we down him. I'd be sure to go back to the Hollowed Crystal and save it, and then recheck my masteries to see if there's any more skills I can learn before heading into the center, activating the pedestal, and this brings us to part 1 of our boss fight against another Church of Avia General, Magliel. The first phase starts off with a whole bunch of henchmen, and I take a lot more damage than what I should have. I guess I was just trying to force all the damage to come out instead of focusing on dodging and guarding. But regardless, we do manage to beat this fight. Now, whatever items you use during this fight does carry over to the next fight, unless you die against Magliel, in which case the retry, all of your restorative items get restored. And you might be wondering how I know that. And that's because I kept wiping on Magliel for 4 hours. With Magliel, there's a lot of damage that you can just straight up avoid just by hanging back and waiting until Magliel throws one of her swords at you or at the Captain, and then you just attack the sword to destroy it. And once all those swords are destroyed, her defenses go down and you start doing a lot more damage to her. But for me, I kept trying to force a lot of the damage through, so after the sword was thrown at me or the Captain and destroying it, I would go and attack Magliel even while she had her shield up to try and break more shields. And this is where a lot of the damage that she did ended up hitting me, just because I wasn't paying attention to certain things, or I couldn't see the ground below me to tell where the sword was being thrown. Just a whole bunch of miscellaneous terrible things that I could have avoided and just simply didn't. Also didn't want to hang back and just let everything go on to the Captain, because I wanted to try and make this as much of a solo run as possible. But with the Captain continuously going down, that does directly take away from how many times that I can res myself, because it is shared across the entire party on how many downs that you get throughout a fight before it's a game over. At the start of my attempts on this boss, I didn't bother putting anything into the defense mastery for the Captain, but after several hours of wiping, I was just like, okay, you know what? She needs to be able to survive a lot more of this, so that way when I actually go down, then it's not an immediate game over. When Magliel starts to overdrive and summons forth her 4 weapons, I think the hardest one for me is the Gale Bulg spear that targets me and then just starts to do a lot of AoE damage. That weapon really hurts. Everything else is pretty manageable. You can guard through most of it without it breaking your guard, from what I've noticed, but that spear just really hurts. I always try and target that one first, and then if possible, I try and target the staff next. But I mean, the weapons themselves don't have a really high HP pool, but it is pretty manageable. I also got hit quite a bit when trying to go into melee range with her, and she would pull out her swords in the shape of a whip, and she hits 3 times with that, and I always kept thinking it was 2 times, and I always got hit by the last one, and it just takes like 30% of my HP off. It's pretty easy to avoid if you just stand back as soon as you start seeing that initial animation, and that whip effect has a pretty long range, so you definitely don't want to get hit by that. Towards the end here, I think you can see how dire my situation is. I'm sub 800 health, no healing items. The boss has the shields up. It's getting pretty desperate right now. But 33 minutes later, I finally down this boss. And it's about 25 to 30 minutes per attempt. So yeah, That was a lot of attempts. And following the battle with Megliel directly takes us into the next fight of Xezat. This is probably one of the easiest, if not the easiest fight in the entire game. I at no point was in danger of getting down, getting game over. It was definitely for storyline purposes. And with the damage output that I'm doing, it was extremely easy to bring Xezat to his knees by destroying both of the cores at the feet and then getting on the back and destroying the one core at a time. It felt really good to be doing as much damage as I am doing compared to my last run. These pillars went down in mere seconds. With the Infinite Wanders, I think it only took 2 charges of it to down a single pillar. But this fight was sub 10 minutes and it was extremely easy. It was very fun though. Returning back to town, I do some more side quests if I can, as well as upgrade the weapons, check the Masteries, check the Fate episodes, and then we are ready to move on. I was a little bit worried going into the Volcan Bola fight because with the boss being fire as well as Zeta being fire, I thought that I might do a lot of reduced damage, hence why I keep pumping mastery points into Zeta's offense. But this fight went relatively smoothly. His mechanics, for the most part, aren't exactly focused directly at the edge of the lava where he can be attacked. Instead, they're a little bit behind the lava, maybe like 5 yards or so. So I'm able to stand right up next to him and attack him for the most part without ever getting hit. Now, granted, when he does hit me, it still hurts like hell, but it's a relatively safe spot. As well as being on one of the other platforms behind him, I'm still able to hit him most of the time. Now, once again, I don't get to choose who he targets, so he does target the captain most of the time, which gives us a lot of opportunity to deal a lot of damage. He has several attacks with his left and right hand to where he stomps on the ground that is closest to him away from the edge, but because we're able to get so close to the boss, these attacks don't hit us. Really, the only fear that we have is when he uses his fire breath on us. It does do damage to us as well as gives us a dot. However, it's nothing that we can't quickly move out of with 2 dodge moves. And then we can just use a small healing potion if needed. As a ranged character, you can stand up on one of the platforms and attack him relatively safely. He hardly ever targets you, and if he does, he launches a series, I think, of 3 fireballs at you, and that can target any one of the party members. You can also be melee and just pretty much face tank him relatively safely. When he enters his overdrive mode, it isn't actually that scary for Zeta. As long as I'm in the air, I'm able to dodge a lot of his attacks that he does with his hands on the ground, as well as most of his flame breath attacks that he does with his head. And so as long as we're just in the air, we're able to avoid a lot of damage. Now, we can't stay in the air forever, of course, and so we do eventually fall down and just pray that we don't land in some fire. Also, during his overdrive, he will flood up to 3 of the platforms with lava, so I immediately just go to the opposite end of whatever platform he just flooded, and it's really easy to tell which platform he's going to flood because you could see him do it. So it's pretty easy to avoid. And you can also just follow your party members as well. They'll automatically know where to go. With this fight as well, I did burn through all of my recovery items, but it wasn't like I was any in danger of getting downed or zeroed out. A lot of the damage that I took was just chip damage from staying in front of him and getting hit or falling into burn damage. There is also a skill that he uses when he's at about 50% HP, and that's Auxilium. It's when he creates 3 different targets across the map, kind of in a diamond formation, and you have to go to each part of him, destroy the armor, and then destroy his tail, essentially, and that will deactivate one of the 3 different types of charging mechanisms that unleash his attack. This part was a little bit worrisome because I wasn't sure how my damage output was going to be, especially with only Ede the captain as well as Zeta, but we managed to pull through it and it wasn't a big deal. And after 11 minutes, he falls. With now having a really good grasp on how Zeta is supposed to be played, I go ahead and proceed on and don't level up at all. So our next mini-boss encounter is going to be the Teu Itar. A really big portion of this boss's damage output has to do with frontal damage. So as Zeta, a lot of the stuff that I want to do has to do with attacking the enemy from the back, and this is a really good fight for it. As long as you're attacking him from the back, you'll hardly get hit by anything. He has a flamethrower that is a frontal cone. He has a chainsaw that is also like a frontal cone. He does have a 360 dual flamethrower that he does move around the field with, which you can either guard or perfect dodge out of it. And Roland will occasionally lock down the mob, so that gives you a lot of free damage output when you are behind the boss to start building up the link bonus, and it doesn't take long for this thing to fall, about 5 minutes. Once the first mech is down, there's going to be a warship that will constantly spawn 2 more mechs, but this time we do have the ability to control the mech that we just destroyed thanks to Roland. So by holding down the R2 button as well as the R1 occasionally, or it might be the other way around, we can continuously fire the Gatling gun as well as pump out a massive amount of lasers to destroy the mechs pretty easily. We will use the left bumper to shield ourselves every time the warship attacks us, and it should only take a matter of a couple minutes to beat the multiple waves of mechs as well as the warship. I would be lying if I said that I was not nervous for this next fight. I was dreading this fight for quite a while, thinking that I might be underleveled or I'm not doing enough damage or it might be too hard, because in this fight we are facing both Magliel and Galanza at the same time. And so this fight does combine both of their mechanics into one fight, as well as an additional attack to where they can essentially team up and unleash a wide variety of attacks, and I don't have a whole lot of wiggle room to dodge the mechanics. It gets pretty intense really quickly. With Zeta's damage output quickly ramping, as well as starting to pump a lot of mastery points into my defense tree, I'm able to start doing quite a bit of damage, and I really start to focus Galanza first, as I feel like he is the much bigger threat during this fight. The way he uses his mobility as well as just the sheer damage that he can deal is pretty crazy, so I definitely want to focus him first. I spent about 4 hours on the Magliel fight, so I'm pretty comfortable with her mechanics, but since I one-shotted Galanza, I'm not really familiar with what to look for in his attacks and his attack animations to be able to dodge them properly. And just go ahead and take a look at their duo attack, Silver Veil Storm. This attack is pretty nuts. Ooh, that's spicy. I did pretty well, except I forgot about the last red ring that Magliel throws out, and it does hurt a lot. As you can see, I did get zeroed out with a single attack. By the time Galanza goes down, I have used every single recovery item that I have. However, I do still feel pretty confident with facing Magliel because I did spend 4 hours on her, so sure enough, we do end up beating it. This was about a 15.5 minute fight. I was at sub 500 HP for a very long time, but I didn't just want to stay out of the fight and just use my range attacks. I definitely pushed it to the limit a little bit and continued to melee attack Magliel, and I was pretty confident that I had a lot of resurrection time left as well if I were to go down. I don't think the captain died that many times throughout the fight, but I wasn't entirely sure, but I still felt pretty confident in my abilities with being at such low HP and knowing all of her mechanics. 20 minutes later, the fight that I dreaded the most is now over. Feeling unstoppable and unbelievable, I continue on to face Id, and this fight was not fun at all. He is so fast, he hits so hard, and it's so hard to even practice against him unless you're doing a no damage run, in which case you would do this fight over and over and over to learn his mechanics, but I'm not doing that type of challenge. So a fair bit of me trying to do damage is going in when I think it's okay after he does a volley of attacks where he goes into a line and then he just kind of stops moving. I go in and attack, and then he's just like, oh, psych, and then he just like starts chipping my HP down over and over and over. The majority of this fight just kind of felt like guesswork on when I was able to go in and do damage, but eventually we do bring him down to 50% HP, and that is when he starts to lay on the hurt. So he transports us into a giant square. Well, not that giant, but there's not a lot of wiggle room in here to maneuver around all of the different types of attacks and animations that he's doing. And I do a pretty good job at evading almost everything except for that laser beam at the end. That seems to get me both times I'm transported in there. I'm not really sure what it is. I think the movement of it is static every time. I just didn't really pay attention the first time. During the second half of the fight, I definitely try and play a little bit more cautious because I ran through a lot of recovery items for the first 50%, and the second 50% is only going to get harder. A good majority of his attacks can automatically be dodged if you are not directly in front of him. Other than that, he does have a lot of attacks where he will jump on you and create an AoE under you, so you do need to be ready with at least 2 charges of your dodge, or you can perfect block it or perfect dodge it to gain that invincibility for a few seconds, but I'm not really good at doing that, particularly with this fight. So I think saving 2 charges is just fine. It's a little hard for me to go over everything that Id does in the fight because I just don't even know what he's doing half the time. I'm just trying to stay out of the way, dodging stuff, and then trying to go in for an attack when I think it's okay. But it eventually works out as we deplete all of our recovery items and we are on the brink of death. We finally get him down to 0%, so we one-shotted him. After the forced cinematic combat with Granbluefantasy and some cutscenes later, we find ourselves back in town where we re-up both of our weapons. We do some more boss side quests to get more crewmate cards. We check our masteries. We complete all the side quests that we can. And I do just a bit of leveling. We go up to level 43 before trying to proceed on. I really don't want to try and over level, but I'm also not sure how prepared I am until I at least attempt the boss fights. When refacing the 3 bosses, I didn't have much of an issue with any of them except Managarmr. For some reason, I kept trying to push my luck on trying to do a lot more damage output than I should have. I definitely prioritized offense over defense, and it almost costed me. I ran through all of my recovery items on that fight. And while I ran through all of my recovery items on the Volcan Bola, it was mainly just due to user error. With refacing the Granbluefantasy, this was probably the funnest fight outside of Managarmr that I had in the game. The mechanics for this fight were really well done, especially with only being in control of one person. The captain didn't really do much, although it did provide another target for Managarmr to attack, which didn't really benefit me that much, to be honest, because I'm already moving around a lot to avoid a lot of mechanics anyway. Occasionally throughout the fight, there will be these small tombstones that rise up. It's important to destroy more than one at a time, because eventually there's going to be some hands that try and recreate the tomb from the portal, and once all the portals are closed, then you're going to be outside of the light dimension. And a majority of this fight takes place inside the light dimension. That's where you can do a lot of damage to the boss, as well as have a pretty small area for a lot of AoE that you can do to affect a lot of mobs. The first phase of Granbluefantasy isn't really anything special. It's a whole lot of straightforward, just moving out of AoE and just attacking whatever target appears until the boss falls down, then you can attack the boss. It's the second phase of Granbluefantasy that is probably the most difficult, if difficult would even be the right word, but there's a lot more mechanics to this particular version. The phase starts off with a small patch of undarkened land, and we have to fight on this. If we start to move into the darkness, we do get affected with blight, and it does start to deal us damage, so it is important to make sure that we stand in the light area and defeat all of the enemies that are coming towards us. Eventually, we will be able to start destroying the big tombstones, which is going to be the goal as soon as we can. Once we're able to destroy a couple stones, there's going to be some hands in the air that's going to target the main character that you are controlling and put a small circle underneath, this is where a small tombstone is going to be dropping. So it is also going to be important on where you position these. You can either stack them up in the middle and run really small, tiny circles, but what I tried to do is try and drop them near the boss, because what happens is when you destroy those tombstones, they're going to drop a portal just like on our way to come up to this boss. And when we go through the portal, there's going to be an area of light on the ground depending on where those tombstones are dropped. So if you drop it where the boss is, chances are you're going to be able to attack the boss or at least cleave the boss in the meantime. If you're not able to, then that's perfectly fine. Just kill all the ads that you can while you're inside the other dimension, and then you can just run over to the boss. But by trying to drop it as close to the boss as you can cut down the run time that you need to get to the boss, and you can have a little bit more DPS uptime. There is going to be a lot of standard dodge or block type mechanics with a whole bunch of balls flying through the air going towards the party. You can definitely avoid a lot of these just by running in a very big circle, not a small circle, because that's going to change the angle at which the balls come at you and they'll most likely hit you. So it does need to be a wide arc. There's also going to be beams that are coming towards you. If the beams only appear once, it's probably best just to dodge out of them. But if they are constant beams that are going all around the map, you can block those and have it deal 0 damage. So that would probably be the preferred defensive ability. The boss will also eventually cast Salvation, and I assume this is like a game over attack if you don't meet the check for it. So what you have to do is defeat 4 hands. I don't know if the 4 hands have to be all on one side or if it's just 4 hands in general. I usually just go for the 4 hands on one side because you're already on that side, so it's easier to keep up the damage. And with the Infinite Wonder ability for Zeta, it's really easy to just cleave all 4 of them if you position your camera angle correctly. So that's pretty nice. It makes pretty quick work of them, and there's no risk to us for the boss getting his Salvation attack off. I'll tell you what is pretty risky though, trying to down this boss at 17%. I dropped to about 200 HP. The captain is also in red HP. I'm completely out of recovery items. Things are looking so grim. I think I still have a very good amount of resurrections available. I don't really recall. I'd have to take a look at the unedited footage, but either way, my adrenaline was still pumping right here. I tried so hard to dodge everything that I could, and I even dropped to 1 HP, but I eventually did fall, so did the captain. So we did get resurrected up, and we are able to defeat this boss after 20 minutes. That was a really spicy ending. I was really getting worried. After the cutscene follows, some more dialogue is exchanged, and I go back to town and try and do anything I can to gain a little bit more power without leveling up too much. So because I know that the next fight, the boss is level 50, I decide to go in at level 49 to see if I'm able to meet the DPS check, and I won't know until I try. So here we go. Zeta's currently at 4,300 power going into this fight, and I'm able to do a lot of damage to Bahamut Versa right now. I'm able to get him down to 80% health before he does his DPS check mechanic. And it was this moment that was the make or break for me. So I be sure to have all of my skills and my buffs ready. So I pop both buffs, and then I just go to town on him, and I destroy the DPS check. It was exhilarating. Bahamut Versa wasn't too happy that I met the DPS check, so he decides to do something a little bit different. He decides to use Obliteration, but little does he know we're prepared for that. So with the combat cinematic, Lyria summons her own Bahamut, and those 2 Bahamuts start duking it out in the background. It is such an awesome fight to experience, and now Id pops out completely berserked, and I already had terrible memories of him trying to beat us the first time, so now that we are on a cooler platform, that doesn't make it any less scary. Id has a lot of the same moves that he did on the previous encounter, with the exception of one more AoE. So he will occasionally have an AoE around himself that slowly starts to go into a dome type effect that starts extending towards the outer side of the ring. this dome really hurts and it will one-shot you. So with all the stat increases that I've done with Zeta, I really try and stay above Eid when he tries to attack us, and I dish out a metric ton of damage. I destroy his health bar really quickly and start pushing the fight into the next phase. For the next phase, when Bahamut rages, he starts doing AoE everywhere on the platform, and once again, I think it's static on where it hits, but I wasn't really paying attention and I get hit by it quite a bit. It was not a good experience. And for the very last part of the fight, it does have to do a lot with surviving his onslaught of attacks until he becomes attackable. It was very common for me, at least on my other playthrough as well, to get completely wrecked in this phase. I didn't really see any rhyme or reason or pattern as to where the AoE was appearing and where was a safe spot to dodge. It was just kind of YOLO and go for it. Towards the very end here, I see that he's attackable and I try my hardest to unleash absolutely everything that I can on his health bar. I was getting a little bit worried because it seemed like the Light of the Apocalypse was charging a little bit faster than I was able to get his HP bar down, but clearly that wasn't the case. And then I also saw that I had one more healing item to use, which restores my HP as well as the captain's HP, and I was really thankful that I had that. And after 20 minutes, this fight finally is over, and that completes the victory condition of beating the final storyline boss. And so, can you beat Granblue Fantasy Relink with Zeta? Yes, you can, and it was difficult. I'd really like to know what you guys thought in the comments as well, and if you are still here after 36 minutes, thank you very much for spending some of your time here. I really appreciate it, and I really appreciate you guys watching all the way through as well. It's a little bit weird. According to YouTube analytics, most people stop watching at the 13.5-minute mark. A little bit curious. And did you know only 8% of the people who view my videos are subscribed? I strive to do challenge runs that no one else has done for a game. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a comment. Additionally, if you want to go above and beyond that, consider joining my Patreon or YouTube community via the join button next to my name below the video. Until then, I will catch you in the next challenge run. Bye bye.